So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm Gottfried Hagen. I'm the director of the Center for Armenian Studies. My pleasure to welcome you and to welcome our audience online to today's lecture by Professor Atanesyan, who is the Weiser Professional Development Fellow with the Weiser Center for Europe and Eurasia here at UFM within the International Institute. And in his main profession, he's a sociologist at Yerevan State University, where he also chairs the Department of Applied Sociology. His area is described as research and teaching political and military sociology, conflict communication, and mass media theories. He has an amazing degree of international involvement. He has been in Armenia, an expert for OSCE. He has been working on with consulting with them on human rights, on women in the armed forces in Armenia. He has been a visiting scholar at the University of Maryland and at institutions in Finland and in Italy. His most recent publications deal with Armenian security and foreign policy, with women in the armed forces, and with media and journalism in relation to armed conflict and Nagorno-Karabakh in particular. Today's lecture, however, opens up a new line of research in that it looks at another highly respected institution next to the armed forces, that is the Armenian Church. One of the more authorities with a long tradition, obviously, in Armenia, and a crucial link also between Armenia and the diaspora. But how does the church actually cope with secularization, individualism, skepticism, materialism, consumerism, and other challenges of modernity? How can it continue to serve the community and maintain its position? Let us hear. The title is up on the screen, Needs of the Armenian Apostolic Church in the Context of Contemporary Political Processes and Social Modernization Trends. Please join me in welcoming Arthur Atanesyan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll put it somewhere. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, this is another topic. This is not my standard one. And Professor Hagen is absolutely right. We have two main public institutions which are very, very popular among Armenians. And I will go forward immediately to show you the chart where you will see this armed forces most trusted public institute, state institution, actually. And then this Armenian Apostolic Church, 26% says absolutely satisfied with church. But the critics, why we started this research is that you may see that another half of the population here, I will use this, is not satisfied with the role of Armenian Church, with its functions and the way it is today. Critics is normal, but it was not the case previously. So we decided to understand what makes church be not very well operating, let's say, and not very much successful among Armenians who used to have this church as one of, backgrounds for our national identity, let's say even. So we will start with general information on the church, just to have this explanation why Armenian Apostolic Church and not other churches we also have. And this is the first church, which is an integral part of the Universal Church. And it's regarded to be the mother church of the Armenian people worldwide. Now you can see here that it's apostolic because it starts with, preaching of two apostles of Jesus Christ, Saint Thaddeus and Saint Bartholomew. So that's why it's apostolic, and it stems from the beginning, let's say, of development of churches in the modern understanding of them. since 301, when Armenia became the first state of which declared Christianity in the region. We also see that this is very short introduction to the long history of our church, and you can also see that Armenian Apostolic Church has many branches all around the world, not because it's very old and it had this chance and opportunity to extend, but also after genocide, when Armenia spread all around the world and established new, communities also in the United States. So they needed church as one of, let's say, again, institutions which protect Armenian identity. And you can visit this website of the Armenian Apostolic Church for more information. Today, Armenian Apostolic Church, again, is one of the most popular churches in Armenia. You see 80% of people say we belong to the Armenian Apostolic Church, although having alternatives. And for example, you have you see here some modern churches, plus we have Orthodox Church, and the picture is similar in the Armenian diaspora also. 78%, the source is Armenian Diaspora Survey 2022. 78% of Armenians living in particular in the United States treat this church as their church, although having alternatives, Armenian Evangelical Church, Catholic Church also are alternatives, Orthodox Church, many other churches. In Armenia, the list of alternative churches is shorter because they have shorter history of this post-Soviet, history of Armenia, and our law protects all churches. But we have this story of having these churches, the main one, and Armenians like it and love it. And again, we approach these critics. Some see Armenian Apostolic Church as one of the most trusted, which is very good and very normal. It's very traditional. Some others say no, we are not very satisfied. And so 50-50. And every second Armenian who lives in Armenia, being like a part of this church, 80%. It involves also those who criticize Armenian Church. They are not very satisfied or very dissatisfied with the church. So this is the case. And what to do with that? We decided to at least start studying the problem, and the hypothesis of our research is that maybe while most Armenians, identify themselves with the church, something happens, and it started happening, some time ago, and it was not monitored. Nobody tried even to understand what is happening, and we saw that the trust to Armenian Apostolic Church has been declining during last 10 years at least. So something happens, and we decided to ask people involved, the both sides, church representatives, pastors, priests, how they feel in these changing conditions, what they think about those changes, and also parishioners, church community people, what they want from the church, what they don't receive. And so we have this dual, bilateral, let's say, approach, dual approach from top to bottom and from bottom to top. Hypothesis. We have hypothesis, and the main one is about reforms of the Armenian society. Armenian society passed through many reforms, including reformation of its political system, its society, starting with the collapse of the Soviet Union, when Armenia took this path of democratization, and we have a constitution which says that Armenia is a parliamentary republic. So freedoms of speech and faith are on the highest level in Armenia, and we're I think, among those maybe 3 countries in the post-Soviet space which have the highest level of freedoms compared to other post-Soviet countries. So we have this free society and very, very conservative church. Either the society should get back to conservative approach, or the church should do something to maybe liberate itself, or become more flexible, or do something. And so this is a dialogue yet, but it might become a conflict. As far as, again, we have half of the population which likes the way the church is, and another half which is critical. I wouldn't say they're like very negative. They are critical because they belong to the church, and they criticize, like, a family member used to criticize his or her family kindly, but it might become a conflict if nobody does anything with that. Let's go forward. And so this top-down approach first, we decided to conduct semi-standardized questionnaire survey with pastors, priests of the Armenian Church, using this opportunity in Armenia, that they take some courses very often to receive new knowledge, receive new, directions, and discuss the problems, and I teach them sometimes. So I conducted survey among them this year, starting in March and to August in Armenia. So this part of the research has been conducted in Armenia, and the second method is focus group discussions with pastors, priests, plus, so to sum up, to understand deeply why they think that way. And the third method is again semi-standardized questionnaire interview, which I started here in terms of wiser scholarship. And I decided to compare 2 communities living in this most important states in the United States, in Michigan and in California. So I went to California and negotiated with one of the pastors of the churches, and also I went to Ohio and asked very, very kindly the pastor to assist with this survey among his parishioners. And both are very, very helpful, absolutely. But they asked me not to announce the names of the churches before I will submit the information to them, which is, normal. It's fine to me. So let's go forward. And first of all, the first part of this discussion will be about what priests and pastors think. And if you will have questions, you can ask them during the discussion, not in the end, because those are charts and figures you might forget, this data in the end. So first of all, I asked them about what, in their opinion, what does the church and the church community what they need. And first of all, you see this dark orange is about a very urgent need in that. This light orange, almost pink, is about that there is no problem like that. And you see that the most important thing they need is a greater inclusion of young people. This is the general information, including, the opinion of priests and pastors working in Armenia, serving in Armenia, and in diaspora. And then we'll split them and see the differences. There are differences. Then we can see that, for example, more effective fundraising methods are also very important and even urgent, very urgent. We see that provision of computer equipment is also for some churches important. And it's not very important to have this higher authority within society, as they say. And my question to them was rather negative. So see the statistics. people sometimes don't like you and criticize you, and you say it's not very important to have a higher authority within the society. It's very strange. And some explained saying, well, we think that we do have high authority and people trust us, so we have nothing to do. Like, it's fine to us. And some others say, no, that's the problem, and we need some better, communication with the society, and we need to understand what they need. Here we also see the problems: greater involvement of clergy in community life. Most of them say, yes, that's the problem, and it's urgent problem. People don't see us like they see police. By the way, let's go back, and you will see that here police is very close by its being trustful to the army and to the church. This is a novelty. We used to have protests and police used to beat the protesters, capture them, etc. And people say we trust it. And I asked the question to the clergy saying, how do you explain that people trust you and police almost similarly? And they say, well, they see police all the time and they don't see us all the time. And that's our fault. Sometimes, clergymen, pastors are very critical about themselves. So this is the problem. And police regulates, this streets process, and the church doesn't. It regulates nothing, actually. It provides services, but it doesn't do that all the time for us, day and night. So that was the reason. And here we see that, again, what church people need. They say they need more active and effective communication on the internet, for example. When I look at the diaspora pastors and Armenia pastors, you will see that Armenia pastors are more passive in using online, communication than the diaspora people. And the explanation is not the access to the internet that Armenian pastors don't have, like they do, same access. They say the church, central governance of the church, which is closer to them territorially, like physically, prohibits us to do that. While diaspora churches don't feel that prohibition much because this is very far away and they are more free to do that. But both sides think they need that because, their potential people are in the internet more today than in universities, for example, or in schools. So you have to find them online, not offline. And if you are not online, you will never find more younger people you need here. So this is another problem. And let's compare. I selected only those points which are different in the opinion of diaspora churches and Armenian churches. For example, inclusion of young people in the church, you see diaspora churches need them more. Because, in Armenia, young people are all around. In diaspora, they are limited. And the churches need them more, by quantity even. Increased support from state authorities toward the church. In the diaspora, churches don't need that as much as in Armenia, because, Armenian churches used to get support from the center, while diaspora churches used to do very effective fundraising, and they're financially more independent. That's why they say we don't need this as much as you. But on the other hand, you see more effective fundraising methods in the Armenian churches. They need them more than in diaspora churches because those are experienced in raising funds. In the Armenian churches, they have no experience like that, and they still think they don't need that because the church, the mother church, located in Etchmiadzin, in the city center of this, church city, must help them. This is their must. And in the diaspora, maybe churches don't think that way. Plus the differences in greater involvement of clergy in community life in Armenia, they feel that more important than in the diaspora, because community and the church in the diaspora are rather same things. While in Armenia, there is a community of people partly involved in the church affairs. And that's why in Armenia, it's more urgent. So challenges facing the Armenian church as perceived by them. Again, this is the result of focus group discussion with them. First of all, is Gottfried said, consumerist approach is a problem. And church people say, yeah, people want us to serve them like, those who sell something in shops. Like you can go anytime in the church, they must provide us with free pizza, like in universities very often. And yeah, this is the common thing. And again, we have this very traditional thinking church people, very conservative. And on the other hand, we have this changing thing, environment, and I wouldn't say those are right and those others are wrong. No, but this is the change. And one of those two sides should cope with it. Maybe like diaspora churches very often do, they provide people with some celebration food or something. While in Armenian churches, they in most cases have no room for that and no culture to then celebrate something or have festivals. Like in Armenian churches in Ohio, for example, they have September festivals when they celebrate, eat, sell food also. Many pastors in Armenian churches wouldn't do that because they say it's very bad to eat in the church or to connect, those spiritual things with eating, consuming. So consumerism is the problem, according to them, and the challenge. Insufficient human and financial resources, absolutely. And first of all, the first thing they used to talk about is, how many pastors and priests does Armenian Apostolic Church have? And they're not many, actually. So they need more. Armenian diaspora is extending all the time, and they need more churches, more people serving, and they don't have them. So this is another problem. They can't hire volunteers, by the way. For example, if the modern churches can hire volunteers, and we see them on the streets with posters all the time, those are not pastors, but they're volunteering for the churches. Our church doesn't have them, like standing on the street and providing you with booklets or posters. They don't have this tradition. This is a direct communication in the Armenian church between the pastor and the community. You can't hire a mediator who would go and advertise. That's another problem with human resources, maybe. Competition with other churches, Armenian pastors still call them sects. They say we are the church and others are sects, like under churches. And as far as the under churches, they are fake churches, and they provide you with not very spiritual information and goods, but more with something which is attractive to them. And they are hunting souls of people, they say. Well, indeed, sometimes if compared to the Armenian Apostolic Church with its tradition to talk about saint things, about, spiritual things, many alternative churches provide you with cheap or free medical service or food or books or something. And this is the difference indeed. It happens. And freedom of speech versus traditional role of the church. Armenian society is a free society. It used to criticize everything, not only the governments, but also everything, traditions, family, and they criticize church as well. So it was not the case previously, when church was regarded to be a very, very, saint thing, like you can't touch it. and you have to wait until they will accept you. Now you can just enter and communicate or ask questions and criticize, which is not very bad for the church people, but it's rather a challenge, and they don't like when the critics is open. They say, yeah, you harm our image, which was developed during centuries. Maybe you would approach us in person, say whatever you think. So this, again, public communication of the 21st century versus traditional communication inside the church is the topic, is the thing. So what can we do? I mean, church people, to address the needs of the community of parishioners more effectively. And there are many options, and you can see that first, should they use online communications more actively, social network platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Most of the church people, say, yes, we should do that. This is the positive attitude. And this yellow means that we already do that. And you see that more people say it's good than those who do that. And when I say, if you think it's okay for you to do, why don't you use them? And then focus group discussions come and say, when I try to do that, I receive very bad phone calls, sometimes from the upper level, saying, are you an actor? Are you a clone to do that? So this is the thing. And so they're more liberal than their, governance. And but here you see TikTok, we divided them because they're against TikTok. They say this is a very dirty place. It's a very bad place, and this is not the place for the church. And I say maybe it's dirty because you are not there. And you have to get in and clean it up. Maybe this is the case. And when you say, no, I'm distanced, Facebook is perfect. And Mark Zuckerberg would be very, very, very happy with that, like Armenian Church like it. But TikTok is not. And it, by the way, supports American politics about TikTok to ban it here because they're spying for China. And Armenian Church also says TikTok is a dirt place and I don't want to get it. Everyday interaction with vulnerable people, marginalized people, yes, it's very necessary. And you see that there are more people who do that than who say that it's important. So this is a trend to go to be more inside that process, which is very positive. Adoption of more modern image, no. You see negative. What is more modern image? For example, wearing sunglasses, even that. They say no, when I wear sunglasses because I need them in the summertime, I see many, many bad, reactions. They took photos of me, put on Facebook and start criticizing, like saying he is a criminal authority. Because he's wearing a black something and those, glasses, and it reminds people about this Caucasian type of a mafia person. So no, speaking to parishioners in a casual, non-literary way, no, more yes. Why not? They say, well, we are the source of, special information, special language. We should be different from others. And this is not about everyday communication. But when you ask society what kind of a person would they see from the church, they say, yeah, easygoing, not just this, strict black men in black walking sometimes very heavily and seriously. Engaging in charitable activities, absolutely yes, and some do that. Many do that, you see that. Visiting, those places where people need the church, really need the church. Most of them say yes, but you see half of them do that, another half doesn't. And serving an example of a healthy lifestyle, doing sports, everybody says, yes, it's important. Nobody does that. And when I ask them, why don't you do sports? They say, well, we have no time. And I say, please show me your schedule. And yeah, they don't. And but they say, yeah, we have no time. and they have very big, bellies very often. So this is the problem too. This is the 21st century where we have images of actors, very, very nice people. Not nice by their, the way they are, but very nice by their look. And here we have very important people, very, spiritual, who don't even try to look better. And again, appearing on mass media, to discuss important social, political issues. This political is a problem for them. They say, yes, social issues are our topic, not political, because it's secular society, church is separate. And when we start talking about politics, immediately receive critics. But social problems is okay. And most of them say, yes, it's important and good, but nobody does that. I myself do this. One person said that. And this collaboration with other specialists, sociologists, psychologists, social workers, everybody says yes, and only, let's say, this 15 people do that from among 100 and something. So this is the problem. So again, this second part of the research about this opinion of parishioners, what people think about the church, and this is the part which already started in terms of a wiser scholarship, and we started conducting 2 surveys. We collected 46 surveys in California and 37 surveys in Ohio during 1 month, but we are continuing. It's open, and we hope to receive more, and then we'll submit them and process the figures. But at the moment, let me show you the interim report about that and the information, the trends. So first, how important is religion for you? This is very important figure, like 50 something percent says very important, moderately important. But here we see that 10% of people visiting the church and belonging to the church is not spiritual. So they come to the church because of other reasons. And it's very important. So church is another place, not just spiritual. And maybe people want that. Another option, not the opposite option, the opposite to spiritualism, but something extra. And I think this number will be growing up with time. Yes, using this scale below, we asked them to say, to respond and say how they feel in the church, being a part of this church community. And you see that church connects me with the Armenian languages and culture. This is an extra function which people have, this connection with the Armenian culture and identity, actually. Here is the connection with the Armenian diaspora, but not with Armenia. You see this third line. So the church in California in particular connects people with diaspora more than with Armenia. Is it good or bad? It's something to think about. This is the function, which is not proportional here. Should it be proportional? I don't know, but we have to think about in terms of wider spectrum of problems like identity, culture, history. Church is my second home. Some people, many of them say that. People at the church are respectful to one another, which is very important too. This is about the climate in the church. Being welcomed in the church is important. This Armenian heritage, and church connects people with the Armenian heritage. Very important function. Church pastor is approachable, available when people need him. Absolutely yes, but I don't think this is the case in many churches. Like, we have to compare. But here we have this success story of the pastor. And by the way, he never interferes in my research. He started helping and and he is waiting patiently for the results without asking questions. So this is the culture which is very perfect. And I wouldn't criticize them much for bad communication. Maybe it's not very modern way of communicating, but it's very perfect communication. Enjoying social events at the church. Yes, many people enjoy social events in the church and sermons. Not many people like sermons, but many of them like events. This is also very important. Again, we go back to consumerism, and maybe consumerist society likes events more than spiritual meetings and talks. Is it good or bad? Again, pastors say it's bad, very bad. But society wants more attractive things. Yeah, and then this attendance of the events the church provides, and you see the wide range of services that this church provides, and this is normal. This is not only about this church in particular, but about Armenian churches in general. They provide many services for different age groups, for example, for women, for children, and this is mommy and me, for example, for mothers with small children. And those who say, I have no experience, they have no children. That's why they don't bring children. They have no experience with that. Or, for example, Armenian Church Youth Organization, which is a standard one for most of the Armenian churches. And young people attend. If you don't have an experience, you're not a young person. For example, yeah, they still communicate via emails. So this is the blue line, which says that it serves as an excuse, by the way, when we criticize the church for not using social networks. Well, but parishioners like receiving emails more than just chatting on Facebook, for example. So that's okay for people not to have a pastor online all the time. And yeah, they have social club also, and this is Sunday service Badarak, which is most maybe popular or mandatory among parishioners. Plus, you see this Western Armenian School and Eastern Armenian School. Both schools provide language courses. The Armenian, Western, and Eastern are different. What is the best way you would like to receive communication? Again, email. You see this majority says email, while social media is also an option at that church. So the pastor is active online. But people want this. So again, being conservative is not only about pastors, but also about church communities. So the most pressing needs of the church as parishioners see them. We saw what pastors say. Here we see what people say, like seeing how the church copes with the problems, and more people attending the church, right? This is the same problem mentioned by pastors. More youth involvement, the problem. More volunteers. In California, can you imagine having many Armenians living there? They have not many volunteering Armenians. More active connections with Armenia. Very low figure. Very, very, very bad. And more donations. It's not very poor. And the renovation, church is beautiful. It doesn't need renovation much. So people. And there are people in California. So this is not about not having Armenians all around, but having not those Armenians who would like to attend church processes and events. So yeah, this is a passive opposition, I would say, passive critics. It's active when you attend the church events and then criticize. When you don't go there and then say, I don't like the church, this is another thing. Yeah, and why don't you visit the church events as often as you would like to? It's many reasons. First is that people don't have time, and indeed, it's normal. Some are not religious, and you see this is very important, this personal connection with other people, to start going somewhere. Like if you have friends who are going somewhere, you also go there. If nobody goes, you will never start. And the atmosphere is not very welcoming. Although we saw that most of them say it's perfect, it's friendly, etc. Not many volunteering opportunities. So if there would be opportunities, people would go. Yeah, this is very strange. No one asked me to get more involved, and who should ask them? God maybe, or the pastor, but this is a personalized, communication which people want. And again, it's very typical not for the 21st century, but for maybe 19th century, when people used to communicate in person, like approaching you and saying, like, daughter, why don't you visit church? Today, this is not the case, but people still want it. And so whenever we criticize pastors that they are distanced, maybe people are also distanced. So how much would the following steps help you become more involved? So if I propose this information to pastors and priests, they could see that, for example, they should organize more social events to bring more people, more volunteering opportunities sometimes. But some people say, no, it will not work. More public lectures, discussions here. And this is the very important thing. This is also about language classes. And sorry that the rest of the information is not very visible. Yeah, I don't know the reason. And this is another chart, very interesting. So would you consider the church for the following occasions? So practical need in church, how they see the church as serving them in this consumerism thing. And they say, yes, first of all, this funeral. When we die, church is necessary to us. When we live, no, not so much. And this is baptism, celebration, wedding, not birthday parties. And birthdays, who celebrate birthdays normally? Younger people, not older people. So it means that younger people don't want to celebrate their birthdays in the church and connect it to the church. And some other things. And we are, 5 minutes later than should be. Thank you so much. And I also have this words of gratefulness, first of all, to this institute and beautiful place, and for people who helped me. We very often communicate with Professor Hagen on those issues we discussed today. And here is Vahesa again, who represents the campus in Dearborn. And he is a perfect friend, and we drafted this questionnaire together with his help. And there are many ideas invented into this presentation which belong to him. And plus, I have many people here whom I know thanks to this scholarship. Anna is here, and she's absolutely perfect and beautiful. And I know Jennifer, I know Derek, I know many other new friends, and this is very important for me to be here among you. Thank you so much. Okay. So if you have questions or comments, please.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for the extremely insightful and fascinating presentation.
Thank you for your back with Karabakh, Artsakh.
Oh, yeah.
That's very important.
Of course. I wanted to ask, does the split between the Apostolic Church, the diocese, and the prelacy, is that relevant at all to your research? Because the Antilias, the center of the prelacy itself, is a diaspora institution, whereas maybe the diocese might draw some more resources from Etchmiadzin. Did that play a factor at all in your research?
It's a very important question, and we couldn't measure that, unfortunately. And whenever we approach these financial, things and affairs, we receive no information. And we only receive problematic issues, like they have problems with it. And some discussions, the part of the discussions is what you said just right now. So this is the problem, but we can't measure that. And it's rather, this the information for insiders, maybe. I don't know, actually. That's the case, that this is among problems church experiences today.
An online question.
Mm-hmm.
From Jesse. They first of all say thank you for the lecture. But they also ask, is this a self-contained study, or do you have plans to expand it or continue in any way? If so, how?
Yes, thank you so much. I hope so. I hope to extend it. And we have another church which is on the way in Ohio with its information. Plus, we will try to do something more. And when I return to Armenia, I again restart my classes with church people. And there will be another group coming and another conditions where I will survey them. I think the process of I wouldn't say cooperation anymore, but competition between the church institutions and the state institutions in Armenia is ongoing, and it's not very peaceful sometimes. So I think every next survey with church people will show us new results, more and more critical and problematic. So this is the thing.
Yeah, well, kind of talked about this, but I keep noticing the contradiction between a church which is truly transnational. It has a global network. It's one of the largest Armenian institutions, if not the largest, in terms of its global spread. Yet when it comes to Armenia, and you mentioned the clergy expect some sort of support from a state. I mean, that this question has a few layers. I mean, one of the layers is this contradiction. Why do you expect the support of any state, not just Armenian state, if you're the largest institution, if you've been there for much longer in the history than the state of Armenia? So that's the first question. And the first layer, first part, and second part of that question is that how do you see your role as a global institution within relatively small state, right? And in a democratizing state where church and state need to be separate, and how does that church and state separation affect or does not affect the thinking of some clergy, high-level clergy, who engage in politics to the extent that one of them actually did an opposition movement recently in Armenia and is still there. He wants to be the prime minister if the opposition movement succeeds. I mean, there's so many layers of contradictions here. I wonder if your research provides any explanation on how the clergy actually think about these different roles of the Armenian Apostolic Church.
Yeah, that's a very important question. And we both, Vahe and me, used to think about that and talk about that. Plus, we extended these talks towards our home talks with my roommate, Martin, who is here, and Thanksgiving also goes to him for those discussions in the kitchen, which are helpful sometimes, very, very often. Yes, when I asked them during, for example, those focus group discussions about why do you still expect some help, including financial help from the state, they have no answer, and sometimes say this is a tradition. We used to receive help from this state. We used to do that. And as far as this government doesn't give us some funding, it's bad. It's not very good and not very respectful. So there are some other reasons why they think it's not very respectful. This is another case, but this financial aid is like a necessity, and it's absolutely true. As far as they have no salaries, and community doesn't pay them also. This fundraising is an experience, and it's a source for funds, but Armenian Church, as we saw in Armenia, doesn't have an experience in that because of what Vahe said, expecting something from the state. So this is a passive expectation or blames. While Armenian diaspora churches have that perfect experience and resources, and maybe this is the question when Armenian churches in Armenia have to learn from the diaspora Armenian churches, and not vice versa, like it used to be. So this is a network church, as Vahe said, and the network means that you have different nodes, not only in Armenia necessarily, like in Etchmiadzin, but also maybe in California. Why not to switch towards that one as the main maybe source of information or experience, at least for some moment. And why not to be very arrogant sometimes and to be more flexible and dynamic inside yourself first, then you can go and start being very flexible in outside of the church community. So first decide for yourself how do you change, and then start changing others like the church used to do. And so this is like the process, and it's a very critical moment. I think again the problem is that either the society must go back to conservative attitudes, or the church must go forward with this, more modern approaches to traditional questions. And it doesn't mean that you have to change like absolutely 100%, but wearing sunglasses is something which you could do, at least to start communication with younger people who don't want you to wear black things all the time, for example. And then you will receive, other requests or reports or problems from those people who would talk to you if you wear sunglasses. And yeah, so again, why they answer to my questions? Because I was teaching them. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't never be welcomed by them. And some of them said you could be another good pastor. Maybe that's why they answer to my critical questions, like being inside this, room. That's the case.
Much touching base with the Zayan's question to you. How the church and the state can resolve the differences in Armenia in order to have a complete nation, so we don't have these conflicts between the church and the state. Even though on the slide you indicated that they don't want to be involved in the politics, but they still do. And if the head of the church is involved with this kind of interactions, how do you see that can be resolved between the church and the state, so we can have a nation that can prosper?
Right. Maybe the answer is that, yeah, can't go up, right? No problem. We have seen that. Yeah, thank you so much. That army and the church are most trustful institutions, and both of them are non-political, by the way, and they shouldn't get involved in politics, etc. So they have very similar mission, not the role or function, but mission to unify people and protect them. And both do that by serving people. This is the thing. And serving well means unifying well. As far as Armenian armed forces used to serve well before the war, they were something which was not disputed, like nobody criticized armed forces before. And the church has same function, if it serves well, it provides people with information and messages which unify them. And they should unify not only Armenian people, but people all around the world, because this is the mission of a church, to unify people, not to divide people. And they still try to do that, being not involved in politics. Whenever you get involved in politics, you start dividing. So this is how church and the armed forces must deal with the issue of division between, whites and blacks, or like here, Republicans, Democrats. The church has a mission to say, there is no politics. We all are people, and we have to cooperate. So maybe the church has to think about what you said in the way to serve better, not to get into politics like some pastors do today, but to serve better. And they have this room for that. Like, for example, some of my colleagues, professors, teachers, they started participating in protests against the government and for the opposition. And what I try to explain them is that they already have a very great room to explain people what's going on. The room is the university where they work. So they can do that very peacefully, very professionally inside the university classrooms and not on the streets. So as far as they, do that professionally, they unify students. If they go on the streets, they start dividing them. Because not everybody likes a protesting professor instead of teaching professor. So this is again the thing, and the army and the church should serve better. This is the answer to your question. But another thing is that, consumerist society comes again, which likes those who serve them. Nobody tries to help them. And in Armenian society, we have this, polls which say, what is the state for you? Most of them say a parent.
So who do you think it's gonna take the first step? Army, armed forces, the church?
Most
the
of them,
state, or-
most
I mean,
of them, and
In
historically,
order to be accomplished, all three have to come together. We understood that.
yes,
But
Hmm.
how that's gonna be accomplished, that's the,
our
only-
historical experience of our nation demonstrates that even when we had no state, there were armed forces and the church, which cooperated and protected. So they shouldn't look at the government today, should serve better. But not as a parent doing everything for you, just cleaning, dishes for you, cleaning your everything and saying sorry that I'm not so good, but cooperating and also requiring something from people. If you don't want to serve in the army, it can't be perfect to you. It can't serve perfectly. Or if you don't, you are not spiritual at all, and you're not interested to go to church, but criticize it online, church can't operate better because you disturb. It doesn't help. You don't help.
no, I mean, the events are not helping out either. I mean,
Yeah.
as a nation, Armenian nation, we had very spiritual leaders that lead this country
Sure,
all the centuries.
sure.
And if the head of the religious leader that is not acting the way it should act, then I really don't see that how that's going to be accomplished until there is some change happens at the head.
Yes, yes. But this critics is not open yet. And if you try to ask the question about their leader, they would say it's perfect, everything is fine. But inside the church, they work on that, on criticizing him and trying to influence him or change him, or I don't know.
We have a couple questions online. I just want to get one real quick. Go. You asked a while ago.
Michael, I remember you, and yeah.
They say, since you work with studying women in armed forces and conflict, did either of the church members you interviewed in Michigan or California have an opinion on women in the armed forces? Or did people's opinions in the two churches differ on trans LGBT rights and issues?
We didn't have this kind of questions in the survey. Yeah, sorry.
I'll just ask a really quick one. I was just curious, and some of the problems that you're describing, are not specific to the Armenian Church, but like decline in parishioners, or like loss of interest in younger people and being part of organized religion.
Absolutely.
I was kind of curious, to what extent is anyone in the church sort of looking around at other churches and seeing how they've addressed these same problems, or even churches in Armenia with the diaspora, which to me seems like some of the conversations happening in diaspora churches are more like what's happening in Protestantism. But I was just curious, do you see them trying to reinvent the wheel kind of, or are they using models to try to address some of these problems?
Yeah, it's a very hard question, but let me start with your comment on other churches which experience similar problems, absolutely similar. For example, when you travel in Europe, you can see, I saw very, very strange thing to me in Belgium, in Brussels, that some statues of saints in front of the church, white, stone, were made up like with lipstick or something by I don't know who. And nobody even tries to clean them up. Like, you enter the church all the time through those statues of Mother and the Christ, and you see them like as clones. And so it never happens to Armenian church. Well, some bad things happen sometimes in Armenian churches in Russia, by the way, where this sometimes Azerbaijani community makes this kind of bad things, breaking crosses, etc., in front of the church. Yeah, and it happened also in the south of Russia in 90s when Cossacks, like nationalists, Russian nationalists, tried to break those crosses in stone. So normally nobody even thinks about, making up statutes or doing bad things. So we are good enough compared to many other Christian, churches. But what kind of models should they adopt? I don't know if there are models to be have. Maybe there are two ways, either to be conservative or to get start modernization process. Both are dangerous, I think, because if you're stuck in this conservative thing, you will not see the differences in the society. And if you are modernizing all the time, you are losing your tradition. And the Armenian Church is proud of its tradition. So you lose your pride. And if you're not proud anymore, nobody will come to see you. Like, for example, we have old and new universities, and many students apply to older universities because they want to be part of this long tradition. And also, being ready not to wear some uniform or to follow the rules, not to have soup in the classroom, for example, during the class. So this tradition is also very attractive today. And many countries, also in the United States, demonstrate that many people, want something more conservative today. I don't say it's good or bad, but many people want conservative things sometimes to be stable. And stability is what this church provides to the people, but people want also something more flexible. And this is something in between. I don't know about models which would combine those two. In politics, there are no models like that. Even there are many parties which call themselves like liberal, democratic, conservative, something. This is just constructivism. And in reality, they are not functioning like that.
I just maybe kind of clarification. When you were talking about state supporting church, what do you exactly mean? Is that through government subsidies or direct? I mean,
Yes,
does that work?
it's important. What I know is that there is tax-free activity for the church. They pay no taxes, no income taxes, as far as they have no official incomes. But they have incomes. They spend something during the year, and they have budgets. So the budgets are open. They're transparent. So you can see it come to this church community meeting in the end of the year, maybe, or in the beginning of the next year when they discuss this budget sometimes. So you can have it. But the Armenian government used to free the church from paying taxes. So this is one thing. Another thing is that maybe nobody looks at how and where you spend. So you can buy luxury cars, or you can do nothing. Just, bring some presents to school children, and nobody will ask you how much does it cost and where did you find that. Or so this is another thing. And maybe they also used to have, some support from the state when you want to build or extend your church territory. It was, made very easily before. But now church blames on the government, saying, no, they stopped doing that. And they're saying like there are same conditions for you and other churches. If you're active enough or trustful enough, you will deal with those issues well. If you are not, it's your problem. And that's the reason why Armenian Church is not very happy with this government. So. Plus, there are public blames on each other, which is not very traditional for Armenians when you used to discuss everything inside our nation. It's again, we see that the church is not very active online. So whenever you see something posted online, it means that still governmental institutions do that more, and church reacts. This is not very nice thing.
someone wants to first, thank you for the lecture. And then a question and a little bit of background they have in it. Did you differentiate in your survey responses by a person's age in the Armenia versus diaspora respondents? They said they asked this because it seems to me that a diasporan Armenian who is, say, the grandchild of genocide survivors would likely have had an active church experience in their youth, and hence they would want more active youth programs today, possibly in contrast to the same generation of Armenians, but who grew up in Soviet Armenia, where church programs and affiliations were often discouraged. The comparison with past experiences could be quite different between these populations and could have affected their responses.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, this is important thing, and we will process the data further, taking into account those specifics of respondents. We didn't have time yet, and we didn't end this collection of data. And when we will process that, we have this information on the age, on their, generation belonging, and then gender, and we will also correlate the information with those, categories, definitely.
First of all, thank you very much for the lecture and informative one. My question is somehow connected with this question. Do you explore are there any differences between churches in Armenia and diaspora in terms of like communication, pastor and people? Because being here for this year, I've noticed by myself different differences, as here pastors are more open for communication. They're more engaged in social media and Facebook. They can just call me or write text message, write different emails. But in Armenia, during my whole life living there, pastors are more closed, like they don't write emails, and it's affected negatively to the church and people. So maybe you see some exchange of experiences to Armenia from diaspora churches, maybe something.
Yeah, it's very important. Absolutely, you're right that there are differences, and for example, this chart shows every participating pastor said that, including those diaspora pastors and Armenian church, Armenian pastors. So most of them say yes, communication is important, and we will filter this information also through this diaspora or Armenia, and maybe we'll see that diaspora church pastors and priests say and do this actively, while Armenian pastors, they don't do that actively. But if you communicate with the church actively on Facebook, you might see many Armenian pastors posting something or explaining the celebrations, or urging people to do something, not to do something, or doing very easygoing talks on something. And in Armenia we have a TV channel HRWAF, which is about church, and there is no such a channel in diaspora. So in Armenia they have this privilege to have the channel to communicate to people all the time, but the channel experiences problems also, and the church representatives even say we don't watch it. So if you don't watch it, how you use it for your purposes? And again, there is a resource, and I wouldn't, accept these critics that we don't have money, we don't have oil, gas, or something. No, we have resources, and they're used not very smartly sometimes. And but they are proactive pastors in Armenia already.
They're working like more general. Their Facebook pages, but not directly here. It's more directly. A pastor can write you a message or call you. In Armenia, it's not really common. They post different, very useful and very interesting information on their pages. So who are interested, they can see. But here they're working with people like you. You need to be more interested. Come.
Well, you're right. You're right. And as far as we saw that, diaspora pastors need people more than Armenia pastors, because this community is limited. While in Armenia, everybody is a potential, a client, let's say. They have an extended version of a community, like not like in diaspora. So here they can afford writing emails to everybody, while in Armenia they can't do that all the time, because indeed they will not have time for sports, for example.
One online question, they were wondering if you have statistics on the percentage of participants who were first generations of Armenians in the diaspora and what percentage were born in the diaspora.
We have another question, or two questions even, in the survey for community members in diaspora. We asked them to which generation you belong, like you belong to those who came, let's say you represent third generation of Americans living here, which means their grandmothers and fathers are first comers after the genocide thing. So, and or you just came from Armenia, from Republic of Armenia, or do you speak Western Armenian or Eastern Armenian? Is it your mother tongue or not? So then we'll filter this information using those, filters, and we'll receive more typical Western Armenians and Eastern Armenians, those who came recently, and then we'll understand what they expect from the church. Maybe, what I see very often when going to Armenian churches here in the diaspora, I see men standing outside the church building while the women and children are inside. And but this is very typical for newcomers, not for these older Armenians living in America. And the reason is that this masculinity perceived in Armenia this way, like church is the place where there is nothing brutal, nothing masculine, and this is the place for women and children. While I'm a real guy, I have to talk to my friend outside and about barbecue, for example, or cars, and let my wife and smoke, and let them just get language classes. I don't know, cook mommy and me something while I am a guy. And so this is not typical for diaspora Armenians. This is a problem of the being, becoming a part of this community. They are not a part of the community yet. So they try to communicate and cooperate with similar Armenians who are not inside the church, but outside the church. Yes.
Talking about communication channels, something I'm sure that's very much in this topic of communication, just like the church with the priest hierarchy there. And something like TikTok, on the other hand, is just open to all. And in a sense, they're kind of not compatible with each other. I guess my question is, when you're talking about flexibility, like between this tension, organization, tradition, what things have you observed that don't compromise the church's tradition, but that are helpful? Like what things have you observed, or what, in your opinion, do you think we should do more?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For example, if we are neutral and we just want their response and their opinion, they say, well, every shift from this tradition is a challenge to us, and we are not ready to do that, even wearing those, glasses. But many of them actually drive very expensive cars, for example, and have so this is not bad or good again, but this is a change. And there are some pastors, priests, for example, Father Zakaria is very famous online on Facebook because he's explaining every celebration in advance, or trying to show what we are doing all together and why. So he's very smart, and he said to me personally that, in the beginning when I started, I received bad, critics from the upper level of communication. But then I explained that this is my role because I represent communication branch of the church. That's why I'm doing that. So this is an explanation. And I think if some of these pastors are brave enough, they can start the new line and modernization of the church like Martin Luther did. But do we need really this absolute modernization in the world, which goes back to traditions today. And again, this is the train law. Like if there is a train going to somewhere, it's better not to get in the first wagon, but wait until the last one. And if you're in the first one and the train goes to the wrong direction, you will appear among first who made a mistake. If you're in the last wagon, you will jump out. You can do that all the time, and you will not be as wrong as all others. So maybe this is modernization is good and attractive, but yeah. Okay.
Can I just directly respond to that?
Please, yes.
Here's so far, so also the discussion right now about sort of how to modernize or whether to modernize to what degree, it's all couched in political terms. Is it good for us? Does it sort of increase our influence in society? And I'm wondering whether there is, or whether you see a theological dimension to this also being worked out. I mean, that's the big difference to Luther, right? That his reform ideas were first of all sort of derived from his understanding of Scripture. And is there, and so I wonder what degree of, say, theological pluralism is unfolding or possible at all within the hierarchy, the institution, or sort of its margins. I'm very curious what you can see.
It's a very hard question, and I have no answer yet. And this is the thing we are discussing with Vahe also, and will continue. I will ask you for your opinion all the time. I don't know, even the word, modernization, you're right, it's very non-attractive because it's very political and not very timely, because modernizing societies just got modernized already. And in the democracy, in the theories, they say democratization and transit societies, not modernizing societies. There is another term, reforms and reformation. Reforms might seen as very, not very aggressive things, but more, slight and light things. Maybe we'll use that term. So yeah, conceptual background is necessary for this data, and I don't have it, the way I would like to yet. So yeah, many books should be written for that.
We have an online question, just a clarification. They were asking back on when you mentioned the taxes were not paid by the church, were you talking about the US or in Armenia?
Yeah, it was about Armenia, where pastors want support from the government. In the diaspora, they rely on their legislation in their countries, first of all, and they're different. From Russia, Ukraine, Georgia to America and France, different legislations, plus they rely on fundraising. And is fundraising taxed in those countries? I don't know. If you do fundraising in Armenia, it's not taxed. You don't pay taxes for that.
Let us think.
Thank you so much again.